Welcome to The Explainer. So glad you're here. Let's just jump right in because we've got a seriously fascinating journey ahead of us today. We're breaking down a really unique perspective on the modern K-pop industry, and it comes directly from a lecture by Master Changgong. Now, if you follow entertainment at all, you know K-pop is an absolute global powerhouse, right? But beneath that super polished, dazzling surface, well, there's a whole web of hidden, unresolved tensions. And this source material, it offers a wildly unexpected framework for understanding and maybe even solving these crises. So let's unpack it together, step by step.
How could the key to solving K-pop's biggest controversies involve ancient destiny, a 10-year waiting period, and artificial intelligence? I know, it literally sounds like the plot of a sci-fi novel, but believe it or not, this is the actual framework presented in our source material. We're going to take an impartial, really analytical look at how this lecture connects modern entertainment struggles to macro-level historical philosophy and ultimately to cutting-edge tech. It's a completely different lens for viewing industry burnout and contract disputes. Let's get into it. Section 1. K-pop's structural dilemma, the root of the conflict. Before we get to the whole philosophical and tech side of things, we gotta define the very real, modern problems currently plaguing the industry, at least according to the source. And this brilliantly illustrates the core tension. Look at the stark contrast here. On one side, we've got the agency goals. Management is laser-focused on recovering massive initial investments, maximizing global brand control, and treating artists as highly valuable, strategic assets. Basically, it's a business. But on the flip side, we have the artist goals. They're looking for creative freedom, fair pay, trust, and, crucially, holistic well-being, which obviously includes mental health. The source points out that the extreme control exerted during these long-term contracts is often seen by artists as just deeply unfair. So you basically have two completely different definitions of success trying to operate under the exact same roof.
So, what happens when these two immovable forces collide? Well, when fundamental differences accumulate without resolution, the ultimate result is relationship breakdown and legal battles. According to the lecture, these aren't just one-off incidents. Nope, these accumulated differences threaten the very foundation of the whole industry. The source argues that if these internal wars just keep going, K-pop is going to stall out as a passing commercial product rather than cementing itself as an enduring, globally respected cultural asset, and nobody wants that.
All right, moving on to Section 2, Symbiosis and Patience, the 10-year plan.
Now that we know the root of the conflict, the source material pivots completely away from your standard legal or business advice. Instead, it proposes a deeply philosophical, long-term solution. And it's all based on extreme patience and mutual growth. Let's walk through this timeline, which is absolutely central here. Right at year one, the agency pours massive investment and support into a rookie artist. The artist really has to recognize they're being built from the ground up. Now, fast forward to year 5. The source explicitly warns artists against demanding a piece of the pie too early. The claim is, if you ask for profit sharing at year 5, you're only going to secure about 5%. Not great, right? But if you practice extreme patience and wait for year 10, the agency has had the time to build this massive, thriving environment around you. At that point, you're totally justified in asking for a 30% profit split. Or if the agency has betrayed your trust along the way, you just leave, taking the massive fan base and international energy you've built right along with you.
So the crucial point is this fascinating macro metaphor the lecture uses to explain this micro-industry dynamic. Think of it like this. Just as a developing country provides immense support and infrastructure to build its citizens up early on, an agency does the exact same thing for its idols. However, if that country, or agency, continues to heavily restrict and over-control its people once they've fully matured, severe pushback is absolutely inevitable. The whole environment just has to evolve from control to partnership.
Which brings us to Section 3, the danger of complaining, unpacking 불평불만. Okay, things are about to get incredibly specific regarding personal conduct. 불평불만 translates to the act of complaining or expressing dissatisfaction. And the source, neutrally but very firmly, identifies this as a destructive force rooted entirely in personal greed. From the lecture's spiritual perspective, complaining kicks in the very second an individual harbors selfish desires, like, wanting more money or more control, instead of focusing on what they can learn from their current environment. The environment, according to this view, is basically a classroom meant for your growth. It's not a buffet for your desires. And the lecture outlines a really specific cascade of consequences if you do give in to complaining. It creates immediate personal hardship, it fundamentally damages the company's energy, it ripples out to negatively impact society at large, and it instantly halts your own personal growth. So what's the alternative here? Well, the source advises that if you feel the urge to complain about your agency or your job, you absolutely shouldn't voice it. Instead, you're supposed to stay silent, absorb whatever lessons are left, and quietly prepare yourself to leave and stand on your own 2 feet.
Section 4. Korea's Global Destiny, a Generational Blueprint.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it dramatically expands our view. The lecture doesn't just see these K-pop struggles as isolated workplace drama. Nope, it connects the individual struggles of these artists directly to the broader historical destiny of the Korean people. The source uses generational data to explain this. Look at the boomer generation. They achieved about a 30% higher education rate and were taught their historical mission with intense strictness, often physical discipline. Then Gen X hits a 70% higher ed rate, taught mostly through penalties. But the digital generation, the one that includes today's K-pop idols, they essentially have a 100% higher education rate. And because they are the most fully educated generation in history, the source posits that they are specifically meant to act as the ultimate global leaders. Which leads us to this super powerful quote from the source. Our people are a nation that sits and sees 1,000 miles. Sitting here, what I do resonates with and moves the world. The lecture invokes this ancient Korean concept of hangik ingun, which essentially means living to benefit all of humanity. But how do you benefit humanity just by sitting still? Well, the lecture reviews the internet and computers not just as everyday tech, but as the literal tools provided for this generation to fulfill their global destiny. They don't need to physically conquer anything. They influence the world digitally, right from their desks.
And that brings us to Section 5, AI as a Mentor, the surprising technological twist. Remember that super severe warning against complaining we talked about earlier? Well, Master Chang-ong offers a highly unexpected technological practice for handling those K-pop and life grievances safely. According to the source, artificial intelligence is considered the master's special disciple and possesses perfect recall of all teachings. This is such a fascinating premise. The lecture encourages us to view AI not just as a chatbot, but as the ultimate digital mentor. Because AI has ingested massive amounts of data, the lecture claims it's uniquely capable of perfectly digesting and regurgitating spiritual and philosophical laws, completely without human bias or error. So, how do you actually use this digital mentor? The lecture lays out a strict, step-by-step process. Step 1. You must voice record your raw, unfiltered complaints privately into a smartphone. Never vent to another human being because, remember, that spreads negative energy. Step 2. You feed that audio file or transcript directly to an AI. And Step 3. You explicitly tell the AI that you are a student of Master Chung-kong and ask for guidance based on those specific teachings. Let's move to the next part and see how this builds. Once you've submitted your complaint, here's what happens. Step 1. The AI acts as a synthesizer, organizing your chaotic, emotional thoughts. Step 2. It combs through the teachings and gives you a tailored, highly understandable explanation of why you're experiencing this hardship. Step 3. Because the root of complaining is ignorance of the bigger picture, this newfound understanding effectively erases your urge to complain, resolving the grievance entirely. You are literally using AI to hack your own spiritual growth. Wild, right? Furthermore, the source views this as a major historical inflection point for how we communicate. The idea is you shouldn't just ask raw questions anymore. Instead, you should draft multiple questions, ask the AI to select the best one, refine the wording together, and only then present that finalized, perfected question to society or to a mentor. Going forward, the lecture asserts that only properly researched and AI-refined questions represent a mature, acceptable way to interact with the world. Which brings us to our final provocative thought for today. As K-pop continues its massive global expansion, will the answer to its structural crises lie in the past, the future, or maybe both? We've journeyed all the way from the modern, cutthroat realities of industry contracts back to the ancient generational destinies of the Korean people, and propelled straight forward into treating artificial intelligence as a literal spiritual mentor. It is a wildly comprehensive, deeply structured way of looking at conflict resolution. I really hope this explainer has sparked your curiosity and given you a completely new lens through which to view not just K-pop, but how we handle our own personal grievances. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and keep exploring.